Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Eastern Lariat podcast, your show for news, notes, reviews, and opinions on the world of Japanese pro wrestling here on cagematch.net. I am your host, STRIGGA, and I am, as always, joined by my man, Dylan. We were off for a couple of weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, actually, I don't know yet, for obvious reasons. But Dylan, I'm glad that you're back here with me. I'm glad that you're back with the listeners as well. We're here now to basically catch up on stuff, but we can't catch up on all the stuff in one episode. So I figured we do promotional focused episodes to catch up with what happened in Japan in the last couple of weeks. And for the first one, we're here to talk about New Japan Pro Wrestling, Dylan.
They weren't so much obvious reasons as technical difficulties, as we did try to record an episode a couple of weeks ago.
We did.
We did. And it didn't play out. It's nobody's fault, clearly. But obviously, so good to be back talking with you. Thank you to all the listeners out there. Obviously, if you follow me online, you know that we had a terrible loss recently of Grandpa Ken. A long-time side character on the Eastern Lariat, but a main character in my life. I'll get into that at the end of the show because I want the vibes to be immaculate, and who knows if I get emotional or any stuff like that that'll make everyone uncomfortable and make me even more unlikable than usual. But actually, in the terms of the wrestling game, like you said, there's so much going on. And I'm so happy that we're back to talk about it. And especially, it just so happens, you know, this was an unforeseen coincidence. Our return coincided with a show with an incredible amount of things that happened. So things are in flux, pretty much. And we're about to talk about the G1 Climax brackets, which is always one of the bigger news stories of the year in New Japan. So we've got all of that going on. We've got everything going on in the company, major storylines, people jumping, and all of this stuff that we have to talk about. So very much enjoyed the chance to do a promotional focused episode on any promotion, really. But New Japan right now, it definitely feels right that we're back here.
Yes, absolutely. Before we get into New Japan Pro Wrestling, Dylan, obviously, we talk a lot about promotions in Japan, but in the last couple of weeks, I've used my time to expand a bit. I've watched some other stuff from the region that we usually cover from Asia, specifically from Southeast Asia, with Singapore Pro Wrestling. I've watched on their YouTube channel. I've been catching up on Setup from Thailand, obviously. Watched their IWA Thailand show recently, and I've also seen that Pro Wrestling Society from Korea has uploaded their big show that they drew a stadium sold out with, that this promoter that is also the Kyushu Pro Tag Team Champion right now has promoted with his promotion that he started actually on some mats that he very famously put in this tweet that the promotion started on mats without a ring and now has grown up to draw an entire stadium. The guy's name is Shiho, obviously the promoter of this promotion. The show happened May 10, and they drew 3,000 fans in Seoul for that show with obviously the main guys on the roster, and also in the main event, Samurai Del Sol was there, Kota Inosaki from Japan was there, and various other wrestlers from the region and from outside came in to do this big show in the region. So there's not only wrestling in Japan that's big, there's wrestling in other countries that is worthwhile checking out, especially if it's free on YouTube. Give these promotions a shot.
Yeah, I'm definitely a big fan of PWS and what they're doing. It's something that I've always loved is watching wrestling from countries where wrestling's not that big, actually, or it's very new, because you have maybe a smaller number of fans, but their passion is very strong. I'm glad you shouted out Southeast Asia. I can't believe how long ago this was with the story I'm about to talk about, but there was a time where I'd actually planned to tour those companies. My home base was going to be in the Philippines. For that, they had PWR at the time, but that's dead now. But they've had others pop up since then, and there's companies all over the place: Malaysia, Singapore, Hong Kong. You mentioned Thailand. Famously, Dick Togo went to Vietnam at one point to train wrestlers there. That's kind of how it gets going. Somebody comes in, like Joey Legend was big in that in a lot of countries in Southeast Asia as well, and that just kind of lights the spark. And with this, China has Middle Kingdom Wrestling as well. That's another place where wrestling is very new. You have all of this stuff going on in these countries where wrestling is just really getting off the ground. And as I said, I love the fans because, as I said, you're normally 3,000 seat sellout is like really strong. That shows you that Shiho is really doing something right. And if you look at their show, the presentation is very strong. Like they really incorporate a lot of stuff from modern. Everybody knows how globalized Korean dramas, Korean pop music has been, and they like had elements of that in their production values as well. I noted, and they had stuff from they had people from Japan coming in on that show. I think Tajiri was a big part of that. Obviously, working hand in hand with Kyushu Pro as well. You had Jiro on there to ruin wrestling in South Korea to make sure fans never came back. I would say in the same match as Melina Perez, by the way, like classic diva from WWE, which is hilarious in a lot of ways. But yeah, Shiho really is working hard to make things work in Korea and going all over the place. I like to see what he did here. I thought that it was a good show for what it was overall, but you have to keep your expectations. A lot of these guys are like super fresh and faced on there.
Yep. Absolutely.
We all start somewhere,
Yeah, I mean, NJPW started like that as well in Japan.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's the shout out that I wanted to give. We obviously go to other Japanese promotions at given time. We will also have, of course, our half-year awards show. Some point in early July, we will put on the voting around the 30th of June for you to catch up with some stuff from June, and we'll probably close the voting 9 or 10 days into July. And we, of course, then will compile all your votes to once again present our half-year awards.
Yeah, always a big deal with the awards, and I can't wait to see what the people come up with. I think there's a lot of like interesting races when you think about it this year in Japan. I think like when you look at the awards, I think you could make arguments for a lot of different people.
Yeah, there's going to be lots of cases. I'm specifically excited for what the MVP race will turn out to be because, like you said, there is cases for so many people.
That one, I think there's very few cases actually. Like I think there's like 3 maybe.
Yes, but who is going to win that?
That's the fun part of it, is to see who the fans are going to ride with and who we are going to ride with as well.
Yeah.
I'm at this point, I'm pretty confident on who I'm going to pick, but I will look forward to see if
Some
the fans
days
agree.
I am, others I'm not so much sure about that. We'll see about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I am very confident that one of those guys that will be in the race for that MVP award headlined NJPW's Dominion 615 in Osaka Joe Hall. But I don't know if this show did this guy a service, because not only is it the lowest rated Dominion show ever on Cage Match. I'm looking at all the ratings right now. The second lowest rating was Dominion in 2020 with Evil versus Naito in the main event, the very famous 38-minute match that got 2 3/4 stars from Dave Meltzer. The other one is from 2022, so 2 pandemic shows. And it is also the lowest attended Osaka Joe Hall show for New Japan Pro Wrestling, except for those pandemic events, of course. What do you make of that stats, Dylan?
I actually think this show, because the reaction to it was so negative, like overall, like that's all I saw that day was everybody online not very happy with the show. I actually didn't think this was that bad of a show, like in terms of in-ring quality. I thought there were multiple matches that really delivered.
I agree.
I thought the main event totally delivered, in my opinion. But there was multiple ones. Like there was a couple of matches where things went overachieved, in my opinion. I think the problem is, though, that a lot of the matches too were. This was not an interesting card at all on paper. Like Shingo was a very weak challenger, in my opinion, and I really had no expectation of him winning. And the other big matches were either honestly, even that one though, the next 3 matches from semifinal down were all rematches in some way or another, and none of them were as good as the previous matches they had. I would argue, and I think that led to a lot of malaise from fans. Even though there was a match that I thought was very good, it still was not as good as their first sign. You had the tag team stuff with Taichi and Ishii, a fresh-faced team. The problem is that the match it's for these titles that nobody cares about. Ultimately, like they've done nothing to really emphasize these tag belts, and maybe they'll start.
These tag belts, I know where you're getting at. I still though these tag belts in the last couple of months, they had a rough time with Jeff Cobb leaving the belts, leaving Callum Newman hanging, and then they decided to immediately give the title back to him. Now he lost it in the first defense again. It's a mess. It's a mess with these titles right now. That doesn't mean that the titles were anything else are leading up to that than a mess. It has always been like that in the last couple of years. Still, though, I'm happy that for Taichi and for Tomohiro Ishii that they at least get something to do, because for the last couple of months, especially looking back at last year's G1, it looked like that these guys were completely left outside anything. But now they are back in somewhat of a role. It's only the tag title, and in New Japan Pro Wrestling, that means that you're relegated to a mid-guard position. But that's better than like being third or fourth guy in an 8-man tag on the undercard on these shows.
Yeah, it's at least something, at the end of the day. So, I thought that there was a good on this show, but the overall thing that this show will be remembered for is how many people turned to House of Torture, and nobody asked for that. At the end of the day. So, and I think that's why, if you just analyze it from a pure match quality standpoint, the non-House of Torture matches were mostly good. I would say.
If you take out all the House of Torture stuff from this show, I think this is a 7 out of 10 show.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a 7 out of 10 in terms of wrestling, and like a 1 out of 10 in terms of booking. Like overall.
And a 1 out of 10 when it comes to real excitement.
Oh yeah, that's the thing. Even the good matches weren't interesting going in.
That's where my problems really start, because I predicted all of these matches, all of these title matches. I predicted in my head right. The only one that I didn't predict right was the dog collar death match, but that wasn't too much of a surprise to me either, given that it's Finlay on the other side. I was hoping for a different result, but I pretty much knew it wasn't coming. For the main event, I don't know. That's always an issue that I have with these matches. Like you said, Shingo Takagi came in. They had this video of him where he was sitting at the shore on these rocks and talking about his life as a single, not having a family, not having kids. He's just on his own, while on the other side there is Hiroki Goto, who is the beloved father that is right now being the great role model to his kids. He's fighting for himself and also, of course, for his family and the promotion. Shingo Takagi wants a piece of that, and that was kind of the thing that he had going in. And he also wanted to prove that he can be a champion in non-pandemic days. That was kind of a nice storyline for him to at least have something. But overall, you knew that he was pretty much a guy that got this spot because nobody else really was left. I mean, look at the roster. Who else would you have challenged for the title that hasn't yet challenged? There's few names that come to mind that would pose a threat to Hiroki Goto, right? So Shingo Takagi, it was good for him. I'm interested, Dylan, in before we go to Goto here, I'm interested in where Shingo Takagi goes now. They very much emphasize that he is a loner now, that the group is gone. And after the main event, he called out Takagi again and said, let's find you a wife. And the crowd laughed about that. That was pretty funny. But can you see Shingo Takagi aligning himself with the other Hontai members now that LIJ is not a thing anymore?
It's funny because they had broken up LIJ, and I just think that they have an overarching story. You know, clearly they're portraying with, House of Torture right now, and they're bloating things up, and they merged, and they sowed the seeds for this when they merged all the factions with Hontai originally.
Yeah.
I think Shingo makes sense on either side. He was a guy. Him getting the title shot is fine as a worker. And again, I liked the match a lot. I thought it was the best match on the show, to be honest with you.
Definitely.
And
it had a lot of great moments, like, for example, the one-man Shoto on the outside, the Rainmaker style GTR, like Goto called it afterwards. Very great move. Loved it as well.
And it's good revenge because of those times Shingo used the GTR as well. So
yes,
he's like,
right.
You want to copy my moves? I'm going to do this new version. That it looked awesome.
It was a good enough main event.
Yeah, it's not anything that's going to threaten match of the year, but it was, I would say it was a great match, legitimately, and it needed to be. And the crowd was into it too. Like the ones that did show up, because this crowd pretty much said House of Torture stuff. It's not just people online complaining. The fans rejected it. Like that was there.
The fans rejected a lot of stuff on this show.
Yeah, but they were there for the main event, and that shows you that there's still juice left in this Goto reign, even though this was a disappointing number. Do you think, too, just in the grand scheme of things, this is a point I made on the Patreon review I did, because last year's big number was spurred by the Best of the Super Junior final on that show. And historically, they've done it like they've done it this year, where it's its own show. But I think last year really helped that draw. And it wasn't even a major match; it was just the draw of the final. It was Ishimori and Despy in the main event. But I think that just having that, if you had the Yo and Kosei match on this show in a semi-main event role, I think that would have given it a little bit of a boost. For where you needed it. So I think that's something to look forward to next year. Will they do it how they did it this year or last year? Again. But, Shingo, again, he was just not really doing that much heading into this. He's been a guy for them, don't get me wrong, but he really felt like a mid-card player up until this main event push the last month, and I think he's going to return to being a mid-card player after this. I think my one hope for him, and if you were a big Shingo fan and wanted him to win, would be to see, because we've never seen Berserk Shingo in New Japan. And I think that's really the next, if they want to portray him as a main player, that's the only way you could jump forward with him, is as a true heel. Like if this show had ended with Shingo beating the shit out of Evil and taking over House of Torture, and he is now the leader.
I was just gonna say we definitely would need a different kind of heel. We don't need more of the same that we've gotten that doesn't translate well to any kind of audience, whether it's in the arena in Japan or on the monitor in America or in Europe or wherever you are. If you're Africa, if you're in Southeast Asia,
if you're the moon,
if you're on the Mars, I don't know that House of Torture is doing it for you. So we need a different kind of heel approach, but that is also something that we've talked about numerous times on this show. do they know how to do that? Or do they want to do that? Do they
that's the
know
question.
how to climb out of their own shaped box? Or do they even want to climb out of their own shaped box that they feel so comfortable in right now? Because they keep piling heat on this same kind of heel work that they've been doing ever since 2020. And I just don't see it, because the evidence is clearly not there that they know or want to do something different.
No, this show answered your question. They told you, STRIGGA, no, we're doubling down. Maybe
Exactly,
tripling
yes.
down. Yeah, on what we're doing.
We're way beyond the point of doubling down. I mean, look
Yeah,
at
exactly.
the numbers in that torture.
Oh yeah, I was thinking about that the whole time at the end of the show because of how there are discussions on Z-Brats being overpopulated. Gato said, if you didn't like them, take a look at what I've got planned.
Hey, I would take Johnny Valletta any time of the week, in contrast to Don Farley.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. But I will say, like I said, that because I think we're starting it off on a positive note with the main event, because that really was the highlight of the show. It's got a high rating.
We need Berserk Shingo, so please elaborate on that.
Yeah. That to me was the peak of his career as a character and as a wrestler in a lot of ways. If you saw that run, it's been a decade since that happened, really. But that really flipped everything on its head at the time it happened in Dragon Gate. And he proved that he could be a top star in that role. Since he's been in New Japan, his character is it's undefined in a lot of ways. He's not that different from an Ishii level guy. Like, he hits hard and does cool moves, and he's awesome. Like, we love his wrestling, don't get me wrong. But he doesn't have a real trait to him. He's got the dragon thing they tried to really put on him, but it didn't really mean anything. It's cool. It's a cool aesthetic, but it's not anything that grabs people. As a character-wise, they told a little bit more backstory with this feud, so I think it was successful in that way for him. Even though he didn't win the title, they actually gave him a little bit of a story. But if you had him be the maniacal leader of a heel faction, that in a way that would bring a Dragon Gate style heel faction, because like I said, even now with Z-Brats, I would argue there are much of all of the heel groups that just infest Japan right now with pro wrestling. Z-Brats is the best one to me in terms of execution, pretty strongly. I would say, like, if you compare them compared to House of Torture and Team 2000, they're way ahead, in my opinion. And I think if you could bring Shingo into that kind of role as a Berserk style group, you have guys too that, let's be honest, a lot of this roster could use a refresh in terms of aesthetics. Get a few of those guys. You could tell all kinds of stories that you could build with them. And, if you get some horses behind Shingo, I think he could be a main event player as not call it Berserk, but just that style of heel group that would overthrow the House of Torture.
Yes, especially like with the likes of Roy Oiwa and Shota Umino, they could definitely use a refreshment and a new start. I mean, they're so stuck in their group they're at right now that there's no movement. There's no movement in any direction for these two right now. With a new group, with a new vicious heel group, I think they could have a fresh start. And I was going to ask you, Dylan, too. You were saying Dragon Gate style heel group. Quickly going to the main event of the Dragon Gate Kobe Pro Wrestling Festival, where Shun Skywalker has said that he will leave Dragon Gate if he loses to the Dreamgate champion Yamato. Now, Dragon Gate has not made that stipulation official. I'm just looking at their website. There is nothing that says that. It's very similar to what Osawa did actually with Kaito Kiyomiya a couple of weeks ago when Kiyomiya challenged him for the GHG heavyweight title, and Osawa said he's going to leave the promotion if he loses, and then they all said, no, we are just not doing that stipulation.
Yeah, you had
So,
it backwards. Kaito said Ozawa said Kaito would leave, and Kaito said no, that's not going to happen.
yeah,
Here,
exactly.
at least,
So,
Shun is saying that I will leave. Like it's a
yes,
self-proclaimed stipulation. At least it's not like he said no, I'm not going to do that. That would be also very funny if next week he comes out and says or if he loses, he comes back the next week and says I never said that. Like what are you talking about?
exactly. Let's say he does. Let's say he loses to Yamato. Let's say he leaves Dragon Gate. And he is the centerpiece of a new group that's led by Shingo Takagi, that has Shota Umino, that has Roy Oiwa, and maybe a fifth guy in the group. That could definitely be something that lights a fire under New Japan Pro Wrestling.
And I think they need that kind of angle. Unfortunately, again, the seeds they've laid on this show tell us that they're going, like, kind of give a clue on where they think is a major
go in a
angle.
Completely different direction, yes.
Yeah, but your idea is much better, I would say. And I mean, they tried with Umino. I think that he would kind of be left out. Oiwa, I think, is just like dead in the water. Like he's not even in the G1 like before, unless he wins the tournament match, which I do think he will. But
yeah, I think he will. He's we've been talking about Taichi and Tomohiro Ishii in their role. He's like in the tag team division role right now.
Yeah, but no partner. Like I said, he's tag team level with no actual tag team. Overall,
yeah, I mean,
unfortunately.
I think him and Zach will eventually get a tag title shot.
That would be okay, like, you know, but it's just telling that he's.
That's exactly that is okay. But look at the dude. Last year around this time, we were so high on this dude when he had this great match with Kaito Kiyomiya. Kiyomiya too last year, man. It's a way different landscape with these two. And he came back to New Japan Wrestling with so much promise. And first of all, we thought the direction of him being in Team DK would be great. But that completely fizzled out.
Yeah, and it's telling that he's not in the tournament. You know, at the start, he's on the same level of Taichi and Ishii and these guys that they don't actually care about that much. Like, that's where they see him right now. It's going to be up to him to find something to break out of that. And it's a shame because I do respect his game a lot. You know, I think he's a talented guy. But his New Japan run, it's not like he's exactly knocked my socks off either, just performance-wise, in all honesty, with what they have given him. He hasn't gotten a lot of chances, but he had a match against Takeshita, and you compare that to the Oleg matches, and you can kind of see why they see more in Oleg right now than someone like him.
Yes, yeah. I mean, that was his chance, right, to prove them wrong.
Yeah, and I don't think he did, ultimately.
Nope. Sadly, that did not happen. So, Shingo, he's going to go back to the mid-card. We presume he'll presumably get shots at the Never title. I mean, he would be a great challenger for Oleg, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe tag title shot. Do they still have the 6-man tag title? Yeah, he needs partner, right? No.
I mean, they were kind of teaming him with Hiromu a couple of times beforehand, but I don't think that's going to really last.
What was Hiromu even doing? I mean, he wasn't on the card.
He wasn't on the show. Yeah, talk about a guy who's fallen.
I mean, of course, okay, yes, of course, Fujita wasn't on the card either. Nor was that Desperado. Was he on the card? Desperado? No. I mean,
although they are building up to a big Despy and Jun Kasai match.
Yeah, they are. But they still haven't scheduled the Fujita Judah title match.
They said it would happen sometime next month. But they may have set a date, but if they did, I can't remember it. It shows you how big that match is on the schedule.
I have not seen it on the cards that they put out.
But briefly, what did you think of the final of the Best of Super Junior?
Great match. Was very high on Yo being in there. I think Yo proved a lot of people wrong with this match. I thought he had a very passionate performance in that match. Loved that Fujita in the end came out on top. I thought he was one of the best guys in the tournament. So that was very good. Very well done.
Yeah, the match was phenomenal. We'll get more to Yo later. Let's go down this card more.
Yeah, so Hiroki Goto, Dylan, still the champion. He's going to be in the G1 Climax as the champion. So his role is going to be probably like playing a roadblock, or do you see any chances that they put all the stocks in his direction and have him win the tournament too?
That would be very funny in a lot of ways, considering how they booked him in the past. You know, again, when I first started watching, that was kind of his thing, though. Like the king of the tournaments, like would win the 4-time New Japan Cup winner and all of that stuff.
That's right.
But they haven't really mentioned that at all, like in many many years. I don't think he's going to win for sure, but they could set up some decent, they have guys to set up, and by guys, I mean House of Torture guys, so I'm not that, because if you look at his block, those are going to be his main people, like that he would likely lose to, is Evil and Sonata. So, maybe you give Waimura a shot, but,
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, Finlay, they could go back to. And they have guys. We'll talk about the G1 later, but I do think overall, Goto is, like, up to this point, he did a phenomenal. Had nothing but success as champion. This show didn't really work drawing wise, but I do think it was a lot of other reasons, not really for him, and especially considering the fan reaction. Like, that really felt like he is the one that they came to see more than anyone else. I would say. So I think he's still got a great run as champion, and I think they know that. And I think that he's all but assured to head into the Dome with the belt. I would say.
I would say so as well. So we go from the heavyweight title, from the world heavyweight title to the global heavyweight title. I still think that's such a stupid name for a secondary belt.
What about the unified title? Should they call it that instead?
Yeah. The unified title, exactly. At least AEW is willing to have their own Triple Crown.
They did that already before. They're doing it again,
and they are doing it again. So yeah, Gabe Kidd did what we all presumed he would do. He defeated Yuta Tsuji for the global heavyweight title in 23 minutes and 25 seconds in a match that was way too long for both guys' style. But like I said, with the box that New Japan has, they just can't help themselves. They think they have to do, apparently, they think they have to do these kinds of matches with these kinds of lengths in these kinds of positions, even though that the wrestlers that they have in these matches are not your Hiroshi Tanahashis, are not your Tetsuya Naitos, are not your Katsuhiko Okadas anymore, but it's Gabe Kidd and Yuta Tsuji, and they have different strengths, and they should have different kinds of matches, but it's still their idea that they have to put on matches that are high-octane spectacles. And for the last couple of minutes, I would say they completely delivered, but they had to fill plus 20 minutes with their kind of style. And I don't think that it's working for them. And when I'm looking at the G1 Climax, Dylan, this is going to be a long 4 weeks with these kinds of guys in the tournament and with these kinds of matches on the horizon. I'm not necessarily looking forward to that, but that's what we have. So Gabe Kidd came out on top of this match. There, like you said, the crowd wasn't into a lot on this show. The crowd was very mild for a long time in this match. They were into bigger spots, and they also were into the final minutes of the match. So I wouldn't completely write off these two guys, but there certainly was a disconnect to the audience when it came to this match.
I have two things to counter what you said, like two arguments to that. The first being, what you just described was many Okada matches in the peak, where they wasted a bunch of times and didn't do a lot, and then delivered big in the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, I know. Right.
Like, that is the traditional New Japan style you're describing. So if from that sense, they're actually not that different. My second counter would be, they had a match of similar length in February that was significantly better than this, I would argue. Like, that went over 20 minutes, too. So they proved that they can do that kind of match in an exciting way.
But what's the problem, then?
The problem is, Gabe Kidd lost all of his credibility with the fans by joining the Death Riders. And what was once their hero is now not that guy anymore. Like, that's over with. I said it on the Patreon. Him being the man who loves the lion mark and all of that, and he loves Japan and he'll never leave, that's over. It will never come back again. You cannot get it back. Once he went to the Death Riders, yeah.
And I think you're right. I think you're right in the end. And the problem is that they also doubled down on that.
Yeah.
He promised he would explain, and then he did what a lot of wrestlers do. He said, "You're the critic, but I am in the ring. So you don't have your opinion, or you have your opinion, but I am the really important guy. So if you're not with me, fuck you." That's basically what he said. And I don't know if I don't know how well all of that translates to the Japanese audience. I'm not saying that the Japanese audience isn't able to speak English, but there's a lot of stuff going on. There's lots of talking going on when it comes to Gabe Kidd, and there's very few content that you can really point to. There's lots of swearing, there's lots of shouting, and very little of explaining. So I don't know where the Japanese audience really stands with that. Maybe they're confused like I am about this dude, about the presentation of the character in the last 6 months after the phenomenally received Kenny Omega match to this dude now. I'm puzzled by a lot of what has happened with Gabe Kidd.
I mean, all of that is stuff I said 2 years ago about him, is that he's a very, water-thin wrestler in terms of depth. And I think a lot of people have started to catch up to that, the madman and all that stuff.
Where it really struck me was when he pulled down his knee pad, and he has this devil tattooed on his knee.
Yeah.
And that's the point where I really completely broke down, and I was just sitting there and thinking, why is it that everything has to be so blatantly in your face, literally? Why can't anything be a little bit subtle? Everything has to be blatantly obvious in big, bold letters.
And like you said, his match with Omega was extremely well received, and everyone loved it a lot. And he did a great job in that match. He's actually had if you look at his wrestling ability, there's a lot of good there to like with him. I also think we have to be fair and say that this company did him no favors. And it's something I said at the time. Putting him against Tsuji, who also was off of his biggest win of his career over Finlay in another very well-received match, putting them together and having the double knockout finish, it really hurt both guys because I think both of these two have not recovered since.
Another very in-house problem with New Japan Pro Wrestling because they do that very often.
Why did they need to wrestle each other? Of all people, why couldn't you have just put them in 2 different singles matches and let them both triumph? And, maybe eventually you could get there. But I think the Death Riders thing, it really hurt the storyline and it broke a lot of people's trust because I think a lot of people really believed in what he was saying because he did say it with a lot of passion. He yelled a lot. That's his go-to move in promos. Is he yelled and he said fuck a lot. That's what he's good at in terms of character work. It's just nothing tangible. And when he broke that trust, like I said, I think that's over with. I don't think you could ever get it back. My idea for him is the vibe I've gotten from him from back then. I think they now have an opportunity to lean into it a bit more and really make him a detestable heel in that, to me, when he was doing all that stuff at the start, remember when he had the match versus Kaito and Noah and he attacked the ring announcer and all that stuff, and I thought it was really cheesy. He had the match versus Shingo, a lot of people liked, and I didn't think was that great, but because of the same reasons. That he was getting hot. A lot of people were into him then. I thought this guy is such a fake tough guy to me. That's what I saw when I looked at him. A guy who wants to be seen as this badass guy. And now he wants to be seen as this lover of Japan and this true, purveyor of a strong style and all that crap. He's a fraud. Like, make that his character. Like, he is a complete fraud. Nothing he says is genuine. He betrays everyone. Like, he has no ideals. You know, like, just make him that. Like, just make him a fraudulent character that is a true, despicable heel. And I think that could work in a lot of ways. Much better than if he tried to go back to the King of Tokon or whatever bullshit he was trying to say. Like, I think he needs to totally adjust his character and be a detestable heel, which he, I think, can be.
So would you say Gabe Kidd needs to join this proxy Shingo Takagi stable that is not going to come to fruition?
Yeah, if that happened, he would be a perfect person to do that.
He would be perfect.
Yeah, and we'll see what they have planned for the War Dogs right now. But I think you could have actually, if they had done this right, and I don't think they're going this way, they could have done something where that was kind of like the final nail to drop, or final nail to get hammered in, is the War Dogs joining Hontai. Like, they're the last group that comes in. You finally have a moment where Goto shakes Finley's hand or something like that, or Gabe Kidd's hand, and it makes it this big deal. They tried to be rebels all along, but actually they are the ones. But now I think they can't do that after this Gabe Kidd thing. Like, if he's there, I think he would have to turn to the House of Torture side. In my opinion,
I was gonna ask, do you think he's gonna turn on Finlay now?
They've kind of planted seeds for that, but he wasn't out there for the dog collar match.
Yeah, the idea there was that he was preparing.
He was having a match. Yeah.
So that was his out in that situation. And I think that was a smart decision.
Yeah, totally.
To give an out to him and to prolong this not this story, but the idea in people's heads that Gabe Kidd might eventually turn on Finlay without really doing anything more to lead you into that direction. That was probably one of the best things they did on this show.
and he left him hanging after the cage match. Remember when literally Evil hung him and Gabe Kidd didn't do anything to stop it.
No.
So these signs have been there for a few months, and I think that's ultimately where they will go. And I think it's a better direction. Again, I think the heart of New Japan could have worked, but I think that's kind of gone away now. And I think they should just not even try that anymore. And like I said, just make him a fraudulent, fake, like, annoying heel character. And I think that will be his path to success in the long term. And maybe he could build himself back up one day, because nothing lasts forever in wrestling. Heat dissipates all the time. So overall, like, with people. And I think that it's very possible he can build himself up again. But I just don't I don't think going with it, like doubling down again on this, is the way to go.
But they will. I think they will. He's going to go into the G1 and double down on the character that he is right now.
He called out Tanahashi.
A lot of similar matches. Yep, he did.
So, I mean, that's a great case. I mean, you could lead, if he does something crazy to Tanahashi, that could really play into his character, that he's not really loyal to New Japan. And ultimately, I don't think he cares about this, because the real life person is going to go to AEW, ultimately. Like, AEW is going to take him, so who cares if the Japanese fans, don't buy his gimmick? He'll go to AEW and it'll be fine for him.
So Gabe Kidd is in Block B of the G1 Climax as the global heavyweight champion, and traditionally the role of those that carry a championship in the G1 Climax, especially with the global and the never title, they get somewhat respected, but they also drop falls to those wrestlers that challenge them later in the years. So that's probably going to be his role. Same for Oleg, of course, but the difference there is that Oleg now is in a role where he gets to win at least like 4 or 5 of his matches, drop some, have some challenges, and for him it's a promotion. But for Gabe Kidd, I think lots of people were thinking that he might be in the race for the G1 Climax. But I was looking at those that lost the titles on this show, and when I saw that Tsuji and Takeshita lost their titles, I immediately went, okay, the final for the G1 Climax is pretty much set in stone for me.
And it would play off of last year's tournament as well. So, that's a natural thing you would look at. Yeah, Kidd, I agree with you. I think if he had not gone through all of this, he would have been considered a favorite but I think that's not happening. Like, no, I think he'll be a fine performer in the tournament, set up a couple of matches, and who knows? Like, if he really brings his A game, he could be an MVP candidate, like in ring wise. I think that's possible. I think he's in the better block, like to do that in. I will also agree with Takeshita and not as many House of Torture guys. So I think he's got a chance at least. But as a winner, no, I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's going to be a traditional title guy in the tournament, as you said. Yeah.
Yep. So then we had the dog collar death match between Evil, David Finlay, that also went 23 minutes. That ended with Evil defeating Finlay with the Sasori Gatame with the chain assisted. What did you think about this one?
No, it was awful. I think you can make the case this is among the worst dog collar matches that I've ever seen. Pretty much.
Matt Connolly was crying watching this match.
Oh well, yeah, that match was a million times better. But he, this is another case where the fans were not buying into this group of House of Torture that they put so much on. I don't know if they'll listen to the fans. I think what should have happened, if this match could have worked, and how I would have made it work. First of all, I think that really sucked about this match, in my opinion. You're having this so-called out-of-control violence, and everything's insane, and nobody's bleeding. Like, what? Like, you're doing a dollar collar match with no blood? That blade job by Narita last month made that cage match, because that match sucked. Like, let's just be honest about it. That cage match blew. And the only good thing people will remember is his blood out of it. It wasn't nearly as good as the first one. I don't care what anybody says. That match sucked. And it also didn't mean anything, clearly, a month later, because the winning team is in disarray. The losing team has gotten 10 times stronger here. So clearly that match didn't mean a whole lot. But regardless, this dog collar match, you needed the blood. You needed the violence. If these guys had a big brawl, like just punching the hell out of each other, if you want to do this finish with the TKO, have these two stand in the middle of the ring, have the chain, punch each other in the face until one guy can't get up anymore. That's it. Like, that's easy. It's simple. Why do we have to overcomplicate things so much with the House of Torture, with the 10 run-ins? And it was funny seeing the War Dogs come out to back up Finlay, and it was like 3 guys versus like 10 guys. Like in House of Torture. Like, this was a totally uneven lumberjack match
and
on top of it.
That's another thing that I want to go into. And I've put the tweet out right after the turns happened in the second match of the show. So we had this cage match that last year was the culmination of this chaos of this United Empire versus what's the stable?
War Dogs.
War Dogs, yeah, Bullet Club War Dogs. And there was it the War Dogs? No, last year, I mean.
Yeah. Like, this was their match. It was the dog pound cage match.
The dog pound cage match, yes.
Remember, they all hugged at the end?
They're absolutely correct, yes.
Man, I guess that match didn't grab you as much as me.
I'm confused with all the Bullet Club incarnations.
That's
so last year, it was the great culmination of this feud. This year, this match didn't deliver really well. It was a very short match with very few highlights, but the War Dogs came out on top of that match, and the stipulation was that House of Torture had to leave Bullet Club, and that was a very weak stipulation because what does it even mean? Now,
clearly very little. Clearly very little.
Now, the winning team of that supposed deciding match is in the complete disadvantage against the team that lost the match. But we had that coming, like you said, right after the War Dogs won the match, the House of Torture, they got their heat back with Evil hanging David Finlay. So there was no winner really in this situation. So one of my points is that you can now, after 2 times they've executed this match, you can completely bury the stipulation again because it doesn't mean shit. And that's part of the problem with this heel group and with this entire feud that is going on. It doesn't mean shit. I mean, what's the gain that you have ultimately? Can you do another match where you put on a different stipulation? Can you? Because Evil clearly showed, or the House of Torture clearly showed, that they just didn't care about the last stipulation that they had. It didn't have any effect on them. Now, if you do a loser must disband stipulation, I would assume that they wouldn't even obey to that because they clearly don't care and it doesn't mean anything. So, what is the purpose of any of this?
Let me tell you what they gained, Strigga. They revitalized the careers of Chase Owens and Don Fale.
Yeah, that's what I need in 2025.
That's what happened. Like, literally, that's what happened. This match ended with them taking out Finlay and Evil picking up the scraps. Like, the big part of this match was Fale doing the splash to the table after Chase set him up with the C-trigger.
Yep.
Who wants that? Again, who is this for, ultimately? You have to wonder that, it kind of does feel like, we've mentioned it before, you talked about it earlier. Do they want to change? No, they don't. Like that's been proven. But it also kind of feels like we're burning things down on the way out. Like, we're going with stuff we know is unpopular and we don't actually care because we just want to get everything in we can before we get replaced. Like, that's kind of what this feels like to me.
I get that they have a lot of respect for Fale, and I get that they have respect for Chase Owens, even though I don't understand it, but I understand that they have that respect for the guy. But to what end can you use these guys to be in any shape or form wrestlers that pose a threat or that fans think would pose a threat? Those guys are in a group full of fools, full of idiots.
Yeah, that's true of everyone in this group.
Everybody in this group is a complete buffoon.
But do you know who's the biggest buffoon and geek is? Finlay. Can you? He got decimated. They danced over his dead body at the end. Can you believe? It's so unbelievable to me that 2 months ago, people said he should be the champion.
I know.
It's a complete joke. Like, he's mid card at best right now. Like, even that feels like high praise for him. And the thing is, they're probably going to use the G1 to build him up in their way again.
It's exactly the point that I made too on Twitter.
Yeah.
It's
the point I made 3 years by now.
Exactly, yes. Yeah. What you've been saying all along about him, but that's a general overarching issue in this company.
That's true.
It's not solely a David Finlay issue. So when Gedo had the Okada card on the table, he played that card. Now he's in a situation that he has multiple cards on the table, and apparently he's not able to choose one of the cards. So every once in a while, he will play a card, then he will get it back and play a different card. But in this way, we are never going to get that dude, that guy anymore. And given what we've said about them, the booking team, New Japan Pro Wrestling as a whole, it's incredibly puzzling that in one direction they completely stick to their guns, and here, when it comes to building a guy, it's not hard. Choose a guy and ride with a guy. It's not hard. We've seen it with Okada. It works. But they don't. So with the House of Torture, they stick to their guns, they double down, they triple down, they quadruple down, whatever you want to say. But in that instance, they completely go away from what has worked for them and they seem to be not able to create a guy, or they are not willing to do so.
And I mean, the crowd is speaking for itself. This was not a hot match. Like, even with all of the nonsense.
And I was really looking forward to that match. I'm serious, because I was really looking forward to all the shenanigans played in this match. And I was thinking that the crowd might also be into the shenanigans played, but the turns, and not only the turns, but the incarnation, the persons, the people that turned to the House of Torture completely sucked the life out of the crowd.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. To me, anytime they're put in a big spot, the crowd doesn't take to them. Like, for all of the talk of them being these heat magnets, like, it never actually is portrayed that way on these shows. Like, you get fun undercard heel heat. Like, that's basically their ceiling. Like, to me.
And that's what I've always said about a House of Torture. They are great in exactly that role, but nothing more.
And I still think they take away from the show more than they add, to be honest, even in that role. But
I mean, yes,
it's better than. I mean, like I said, the fans are talking. It's not just me; it's the people in the arenas. At the end of the day, like they don't care. Like, ultimately, this is what they like in wrestling, and that's what we're getting. I mean, it's like I said, it's going to be bigger because this is now becoming a promotional wide storyline. And even in the G1, there's going to be 4 or 5 matches a night, at least 3, maybe probably more, of House of Torture, like on these G1 shows.
Why is Sanada in the tournament?
He's a former champion.
Yeah.
Former winner, G1. No, he didn't win, but he was in the final.
Evil is too, but
yeah, and that's the problem.
You look at this guy, and he's checked out.
Oh yeah, that's completely accurate. But that's the thing is, STRIGGA, they do play cards. They're just bad ones. Like you want them to play Finlay and make him a big push guy, but they said no, we like Evil better. How do I know this? Look at the match they just had with each other in their big blow-off match. Sanada getting another spot that could have gone to Oiwa easily, but they said no, Oiwa has to be the one like fighting Fale to get into the tournament. Which, I mean, I think Oiwa will win that. We can hope, but I think we can't write out that Fale and Chase are not in this tournament, in my opinion, because again, they put them in a main event angle. What have they done with Yoshihashi and Oiwa recently to make you think that they value them more than the House of Torture guys?
Nothing.
And so, I mean, again, we could much, much, much prefer that. But it really feels like, to me, we're going to get more House of Torture than ever going forward. And as I said, I think there's going to be some shows ahead where every single match will be a House of Torture versus New Japan match. Once this Hantai gimmick gets fully realized that it's everybody versus everybody, they want that Avengers style. It's kind of what I'm feeling like. Like all the villains on one side and all the heroes on one side, and they all battle each other. That really feels like what they're building to for me. And as I said, there's going to be some shows where every single match is a House of Torture match. But I think eventually the fans will turn on that. Even last year, it's funny because people have brought this up a lot too, that in the Tanahashi's press conference, he was saying how, man, houses are really down lately. It's because of House of Torture that people aren't showing up, and I'm going to make some changes to this. And
he lied. The president lied to us.
But you think that they would learn if they at least are acknowledging that they're not good for business, like in some ways. Yeah. So why are we leaning into it more? It just makes you wonder. Overall,
it makes you wonder. It goes back to what I just said about creating the guy. Either they don't want to, or they're not capable of.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, both could be true.
I mean, what else makes sense?
Buckle up, people! It's going to be the summer of House of Torture. I honestly think this. If they get their way, if Gato gets his way, the people responsible for running this company get their way, this could be all of 2026. Like that could be, like I said, the formulation of Hontai, a unified Hontai, may be just the beginning, and we might not get a blow off for this until 2027. Like
You know
that's
what? You know what? The worst possible scenario in this situation, I don't believe it's unlikely. The worst possible situation here would be Evil getting a rematch against Tanahashi in the Dome, and Evil being the one to retire Tanahashi.
Tanahashi loves Evil. Like
I know.
Watanabe was one of his like hand-picked guys when he came in. They used to do commercials together. When I first started watching wrestling, that like when he was still a young lion, like he was in there with Tanahashi, like in their commercials.
Yeah.
You know, like that is his guy. So I totally see them wanting, and that's the thing. I mean, I think Evil could be a fine never guy, like if he was just himself. But there was clearly a ceiling to him just being a regular wrestler. But I think it's worth a try, at least, like rather than just keep doing this. Can we just see him be himself?
It's so going to happen now. I'm imagining everything surrounding this.
I think the only thing that could stop that is if Tanahashi would rather have like a tag match as a retirement.
Yeah. Or if the other idea that I had in my mind for Tanahashi's retirement would be him putting over Yomura.
Or he could just win the G1 and win the title at the Dome.
Or he could. Yes.
Is that?
Okay.
What about Takeshita here? Like you said, he dropped the title. Do you think, like you said, I think it's, to us, it feels like, okay, this is a natural main event. Takeshita and Tsuji in the final of the tournament. Like, do you think they would go all the way with him, even being an AEW guy as well?
I think they will. I think what you said a couple of months ago is true, that they're trying to convince him that he wants to be here, and that they will put everything behind him, and they will do anything in their power to make him stay and to make him the guy.
And they need him. Like, you know, that's the reason why they're doing that, is because he is clearly by far the best possible option. And they may just say, look, okay, like I know you're making way more money in AEW right now, but we're just going to push you as the main guy anyway. Like, get what we can get out of you. Just give us what you can on the big shows, and we will use you.
And he shows, and the promotion that he is actually with shows that he's willing to be there. He's in Japan very often, even though that he is a main character on a weekly US product. He's here a lot.
He is a character. I wouldn't say he's a main character in AEW, but he is a guy that wrestles on TV more often than not. You know, I think that he would be there if they gave him that option and said, look, like, you're going to be our guy for the next year. Like, you run this company, pretty much. Like, you are the main event guy. We're going to build up somebody. And I mean, I think that's a very possible scenario you gave into, even if he's in AEW, and I'm sure they would rather him just be a New Japan guy and just live there and all that stuff. But with the financial situation, it's really, really unlikely to make that happen. Like, they just are not going to be able to put that much money into it, with Bushiroad not wanting to lose more money overall right now. So if they could convince him through a push, like, we're going to make you the top star of Japan, which is what he would be. If he had a title reign with New Japan, he would be the number one star in Japan at that point. And from there, like, we'll put over whoever we have in mind, because I think that answer is still very unclear among their native roster. So they could buy themselves another year with Takeshita. And I think that would be really his main role, because how they booked him is really much like in AEW. He's more like a utility player, like, than a main guy. He's here to try to get something out of their guys like Oiwa, Bolton.
That
like,
wasn't roll up until now.
Right, exactly. You're right. You're right. Like, you're totally right. And I think now that he's lost this title, he will be a main player. You're completely correct. Like, yes.
They were looking for something that they could give him to say, hey, look at this guy. He is a champion in New Japan. He has great matches. He's on the card as well. He's an AEW guy from America. He's back here. Now, he has... this loss is not a loss. This is a promotion. You know? I said it before. When you go to Bolton, being the never openweight champion for him, for his status in the promotion right now is a good thing. For others, if like Uemura was the never champion or Tsuji was the never champion, I would say, that's not good for them because they will be dropping falls to 3 or 4 guys in the tournament. For Bolton, it's completely fine to drop these kinds of falls and to bounce back and beat those guys later in the year. That's going to be his role. Takeshita, he's free. He doesn't have to have any challenges coming up in the second half of the year. He is free to go through it all.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, and I also think this was very close to the best match on the show.
Yeah.
The problem is
surprisingly good, Dylan, was the actual third match on the show. Zack and Oiwa versus Phantasma and Shodomino. That was surprisingly good for a lower card tag match.
It was good. But Oleg and Takeshita, I thought the problem with them is this was a very good match, but I think that everyone thinks their February match is better, and including me.
like with many of these matches here.
And I think that's why things were so negative. Even the good stuff didn't actually hit anyone because you could easily just say, well, their one in February was a lot better. Same thing with the Kid and Tsuji. The Kid and Tsuji match was not bad as a match. It just wasn't good either. It was like 3-star, like 6 out of 10 level to me. Some people rated it a little higher. It's got a decent rating on Cage Match, but it definitely wasn't as good as their first match. Like pretty much everyone agrees with that. This was a really strong match, but their first match was I thought their first match was a complete banger, like one of the best matches of the year to me in New Japan. And this was like a great match on its own and a little lesser than the main event. But it was still really well done. I think of all of their like quote unquote young guys, like he's in his 30s now, but still he's a newer wrestler. He's the one I think is the best. Like me personally, like I like watching him more than every other young wrestler that they have. Or a new guy. I'm not saying that he'll be the champion or like the world champion, but he's the one I personally enjoy watching the most. And I think he did a great job.
They're protecting him really well right now.
Yeah.
I have my doubts if he'll... I have my doubts, not if, so when they will promote him to a bigger role. Will they also demand him to do these 20-minute, 25-minute matches? That's what I want to see if he can do that.
Who do you think has like more upside at this point in 2025? Bolton or Finlay?
Bolton.
Yeah, me too. And I love Finlay. I was like his OG shooter. Like when everyone said he was bad.
I love Finlay as well.
But I don't trust the booking.
Exactly. The difference between the two is we've seen Finlay's booking.
Exactly. It's nothing against him at all as a talent. No. I think he would be a totally worthy main eventer. But again, I will bring back 2 months ago, everyone said he should win the title. And so how did we go from there in 2 short months to here, where we're at now, where he feels like
how wrestling works sometimes.
And that shows you that he can get it back. If that like a switch got flipped one day, and Gato was just like, we're not going to screw it up this time. So, but we just don't think that'll happen because we've seen it happen multiple times with Finlay. And Bolton, we haven't had that experience yet, but he could very well fall into that hole. Like, who's to say he doesn't drop this title and lose in some embarrassing fashion, or he turns the House of Torture? We can't predict those things. We can only judge him for his performances, and his performances are great, I would say. And like you said, I'm not sitting here saying I don't think he's who they want to be, not just the champion, but even the foreigner ace. I don't think they want that for him. But I think he can do it only because they've either messed up or the talent isn't there for the others that they have.
Normally, I would say after this loss, Finlay needs to go away for a couple of months.
Yeah,
But the problem is the
yeah, the
schedule
problem.
is what it is. They need the guy in the tournament.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, that was a humiliating defeat. Like, it wasn't just a loss; it was like a
No,
decisive
this
beating.
this is like I said. He should really go to a different territory, wrestle there
Yeah,
for a couple of months, and come back then.
yeah. Like you said, he's just gonna have to bounce back. And I do think he and the War Dogs in general, whether it is through a Gabe turn or through joining Hontai, will play a major role in this House of Torture storyline ahead. I just think that they've fumbled everything,
Yeah.
like leading up to it.
Listen, Dylan. Going to the questions that we've got from Ice Twister here. Are we headed towards a Blood Warriors / Junction 3 style of feud with a huge House of Torture versus main army taking up most of the card? We basically answered that already. But
It will not be nearly as good as that. I can promise you, because that was an incredible feud. Like, that was one of the greatest DG feuds. This will be nowhere near that style.
I love the Blood Warriors, man.
Yeah, and Junction 3 was awesome.
The other question here is, what are they going to do with the remains of LIJ and whatever is left of United Empire?
Pick a side.
Pick a side, right?
Like, I think that's true for everybody who's like outside the box right now. They're gonna have to be on one side or another eventually.
So I've watched these 2 character pieces that they've put up on New Japan World. One was about Francesco Akira. They showed him in a very intimate situation when he was having a phone call with his mom, and he talked about his little brother that's called Yutaka, and that was the name of his finishing move back in his All Japan days, by the way. They showed him learning Japanese, and he was training with the Kyushu Pro guys because, of course, Tajiri was instrumental in bringing him to Japan, and they had Tajiri talk about how he stuck out to him when he was touring Italy a couple of years ago. So that was a very good character piece and showed you the guy behind the character, that's Akira Francesco. The problem there is that few of those things that we saw in that character piece that I just described translate to the actual character that Francesco Akira is with the United Empire. He had a good tournament in the Best of the Super Junior, and he adapted that similar submission move that they showed in the character piece that Tajiri taught him, and that was good and all. But I personally thought, others might see that differently, I thought that just very few points of that character piece video really translate to the actual character that the guy is portraying in the ring. And that is where my issues lie with a lot of guys in that promotion, because they play a character on the shows, on the roster, and then they will talk about how they are doing community work. They will talk about how they love the Japanese culture and are into a lot of things. In lots of cases, there is a disconnect between what the guys say online, what the guys say in videos, and what they do inside the ring. And I think that is a very huge issue that this promotion has, and that this promotion has to tackle in order to create compelling and logic characters.
Yeah, it just feels like because what you said is so, that character piece of him talking, they did a very similar thing when he was in All Japan. They had that documentary. It showed him still learning Japanese back then 5 years ago. So you can see how hard it is that he's still doing
Chanko as well.
Yeah. It was really good. But that's much more interesting than what they want to do. They don't really like characters so much as tropes. And that's how a lot of their characters are. Like, Evil is a big trope, ultimately. All of their matches are kind of the same, like, when you think about it. It's not like they do anything really expressive. There's no real reason for them to be like this. Like, they don't have any real complicated storyline that led them to this point. Like Sonata. Like, what is his character motivation? right now?
He's
Does he have any?
He's an idiot.
That's not a character. Like that's just something he does.
That's his character.
Yes, his character is not a character, and I think that's the problem. And like you said, that Akira one is so fleshed out and deep, and I feel like they don't want to do that. Maybe they think that's too deep for a wrestling audience. I don't know. I don't think it is at all. I think that's the kind of stuff that draws people in.
If that's too deep for a wrestling audience, why produce these videos in the first place?
I mean, that's a great question. Why produce these videos and not have it on the show?
Kosei Fujita had another one. We saw him be a big fan of bicycle riding. We saw that he is a fan of Rotten Graffiti, a band that I started listening to after I saw the video, and I really, really like their music. And I can totally can relate to Fujita liking their music as well. He was very nervous when he met these two guys. They are fans of New Japan Pro Wrestling. They were so hyped when they got to hold up his junior championship, or the junior tag title it was when they filmed the video. They were really hyped to meet him, and he was a guy. He didn't play a guy, but he was a guy that was very nervous about this meeting with his stars. And I thought that was completely relatable, a completely relatable, normal dude that we saw there. And that's something that you can double down on. I mean, why can't he just like portray this character that he also was in this very in this documentary style video, portray this character on the shows as well?
It just because the show, it sounds like those videos to me were something they wanted to do. Like the wrestlers. Like, it's not a part of any bigger storyline or anything. But that doesn't mean it wouldn't be more interesting if they did that, because I think you're right on that sense. But I just don't think they care about it. Especially for those guys, like the junior heavyweights. Like I think they don't have any big.
I want to know, Dylan. I want to know what the motivation behind Yujiro Takahashi is now.
And again, that's another one. It doesn't matter. Like, there is none. He's not even where he was before. Right before House of Torture, he has even less. Like, at least he had a personality then. Like, what does he have now?
Yeah.
What about the tag titles here?
Doesn't even have a flashy outfit.
No, he has nothing. Like, I mean, he's barely even a wrestler. Like, when's the last time he had a match even?
I mean, on this show.
Oh, well,
he was
there
on
you
this
go.
show.
Oh, I forgot about that.
I mean, it's not. It was a 6-minute match, and he didn't do a lot. It's fine.
Yeah, I watched that, by the way. Like, I watched this whole show.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I mean, you mean the heavyweight or the junior tag title?
The heavyweight tag titles.
I mean, we talked about it. I mean, it's fine.
I thought it was a good match. I thought it over-delivered, honestly. Like, I thought that
over-delivered because of how much Ishii and Taichi cared.
And that's that's another thing I noticed watching this show. I made a note of this on the Patreon. They were two of the guys that really stood out, and the main event as well. A lot of these guys on this show, even the guys I like and guys that we want to have upside and all that stuff, they wrestle in a way like Taichi and Ishii wrestle in a way that makes you feel like they want to win. Like, and I think a lot of these guys kind of go through spots. More so, like how they build their matches out. They want to get something into their matches. They actually wrestle like they want to win. They have aggression and intent in their moves that a lot of the roster doesn't. And I think the main event showed that, but also Taichi and Ishii did. And on top of it, the crowd was really into them. Again, this crowd wasn't hot for a lot, but they were really digging them in the final stretch. And I'm interested to see where they go. I will say, when I watched them, I don't think they really... They're not a natural fit as a tag team to me, like stylistically.
Yeah, that's right.
They have an easy story.
I hope they don't try to force anything.
Well, yeah, I mean, they can't. They're so different stylistically that I don't think they really can. But I think that, and we're already seeing signs that Taichi's going to turn, like, as soon as well. Like, they're kind of playing into him rebelling and not being in Hontai and not liking how things have gone, blah, blah, blah. So that's very possible. I like this as kind of a one-off team just because, like, they have a natural pairing in real life. Again, with their trainers. Taichi being trained by Kawada and Ishii being mentored by Genichiro Tenryu as well. And Tenryu and Kawada were a part of the same faction. in All Japan in Revolution, like the original one. So I like that they're bringing back something from 40 years ago here.
Yes.
But something that I loved a lot. That was one of the absolute best periods of Japanese wrestling, to be fair. But I love that they're together. They have that. In ring, though, I think they have some work to do in terms of. Again, I'm not saying they have to really like change gimmicks or anything, but I just think that they should try to work as like a team. You know, like have double team moves and things like that. And Newman and Okan's another one. Like, I don't think they had a lot going anyway as a team. So I totally agree with this move. I think the crowd dug it a lot, and I think that they have upside. It's a shame that having the tag belts once again leaves you outside the outside looking in of the G1 when they should be in automatically. But I mean, at least they will have the chance to be in, I guess.
This middle part of the card was actually the highlight of the show. These two matches, the tag title and the Never title.
Yeah, like I said, this wasn't a bad show. Like overall, it's just the bad stuff stood out. It felt like a black cloud over the show that covered up all the good, including the match we're about to talk about.
Exactly, the black cloud. I didn't see the angle in total, and I didn't care not to go back and review it. So, was it that Kanemaru? He said he couldn't wrestle, right?
Yes, that was a last-second deal. Like, we had thought it was going to be Sho and Kanemaru heading into the show.
Was it a real thing or a storyline thing?
I suspect it was a storyline thing, but it may have been real. Who knows?
That too, because it looked very goofy.
Yes.
So he was replaced by Doki making his return and aligning himself with the House of Torture. And here, I want to say that Doki turning is the one turn to the House of Torture on this show that I can accept.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, let's hear this.
So he had his great moment in the Tokyo Dome where he was challenging Desperado for the junior heavyweight title, and obviously it ended with this horrible injury that he sustained. Now, people were waiting for him to make his return, for him to go back challenge El Desperado eventually. But I don't think that they could have been able to recreate the run that Doki had last year. So now, with him coming back, they are not in the situation that he is going to go for Desperado right now. He's with the House of Torture now. I think in his return, he's now free of the pressure of coming back and recreating the run that he had and challenging Desperado once again for the title. Second of it, I think, of course, the run last year for him as he wasn't really a baby face, but he was leaning towards that role. He was kind of a tweener guy, not very beloved by lots of the audience.
He was a baby face to the fans, for sure, I'd say.
Yes, exactly, he was. Now, I think the guy feels much more comfortable in a heel role. You saw it when he came out here and he came back. He had much more oomph to everything that he did than any other of the House of Torture guys. You can name anyone from that group. His stuff that he did that looked completely different from what Narita or Takahashi or even Sho are doing these days. So
yes, because he's a better wrestler than all of those guys. Ultimately.
Exactly. Ultimately, too. So I think that this turn is the one that I can live with.
You know, I actually agree with you that he himself is more comfortable as a heel, and I wouldn't mind that as the end game to his character. The problem is, that story you just described of him challenging for the belt he never lost is so easy and would work. The crowd would get behind that. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that they would be in for that ride. And then, if he didn't get the belt back, that could lead to a turn. That would have been extremely more logical. And on top of it, on top of that, you've just thrown away this really, let's face it, the junior title doesn't have a lot of good storylines in them. Ultimately, like they don't put enough effort into that belt for it to be that. That's why they have to go outside with Kasai to make something happen to make people care about this belt.
Right now, the junior title. So Doki is ready now to come back. He's back now.
Yes.
But there is no way that right now or in the next coming months, he will be able to wrestle for the junior title. They have the program with Desperado and Jun Kasai lined up because that worked out for them.
Yeah.
They also have Kosei Fujita as the winner of the Best of the Super Junior, and that match isn't even scheduled. So Doki being back and not being able to wrestle Desperado in the next, 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, then the G1 would take the schedule after that.
Exactly. And so there really is no way for him to get the Thunder back.
Why couldn't they just have him debut at Destruction in September? Like, he didn't have to come back now just because he's cleared.
That's right. Yeah, they could have waited. Yeah, that's right.
And on top of it, another issue I have with this, because again, that's like one of the few potentially drawing angles they have for the title. Remember last year? Let's not forget how he won this belt. He got that belt because Desperado and Show bombed in their cage match. It did a horrible number, and then 1 week later, Doki got the title, and he did better than anyone could have expected, pretty much. And he was our junior MVP last year, and well deserving of that. But taking that even aside, like let's say you're a believer in this, and you just want to want Kosei to get the belt, because I think that's where this is ultimately going.
Yeah, and that's another point. That's another point. So there's really no room for Doki right now, sadly.
And that's fine. But even then, the last time we saw Doki and Sho together was their match last year, where we saw Kishin Doki, which was fucking awesome. Like 3-minute squash of Sho, like it was awesome. And then he got beaten down by Sho to be saved by a returning Master Wato. And the next thing we see is him turning on Master Wato to side with Sho.
I'm like I said, nothing means anything in this promotion.
And that's the problem. So that tells you right there. Like, well, nothing means anything. So who even cares? Another reason this match sucked.
I'm just saying, like, when I saw Farley, when I saw Chase, and when I saw Doki, I said, okay, I can take the Doki one for the House of Torture.
But the problem is he's the worst because he's the only one that had upside to him.
Yeah,
and that's gone now. Ultimately, like he will now team with Sho and be in this void, and I just think that he had a lot more potential. Even if he,
I'm sorry, it's really crazy, and that's another talking point. How many guys Gedo has sacrificed to this void in order to prove something that is not going to be proven right? It's incredible. They've sacrificed Sho. They are now on the verge of sacrificing Doki. They've sacrificed Ren Narita. Zanada is whatever he is. It's incredible.
And I mean, the thing is, most of these guys aren't very good that you just named. Like, even if they were on their own, they really had a ceiling to them. Outside of Sonata, which they inexplicably put the belt on and saw so much in for all those years. These guys are not that great on their own. So I understand wanting to give them a gimmick. Sho looked like he had upside at one point. And it felt like he maybe could be something, but there's a ceiling to any junior talent in this company, I feel like. So from that perspective, I'm kind of with you, and I agree with your ultimate point that Doki is probably more suited to being a heel. But I just think the logic, like the storyline makes zero sense. You have to do exactly what you did and just blow it off and say it doesn't matter. Like, you cannot logically explain this turn, whatsoever. And as a babyface, I thought he had more upside. But the biggest crime of all this is because a lot of people were mad about Doki turning, and understandably so. I actually think the bigger crime than that, because I agree with your ultimate point, even if I think they got there in the most ass way possible that made it bad. The biggest flaw of this match, the last time we saw Yo was in a career-making performance, allegedly. in the end of the Best of the Super Junior tournament. The match quality he had and the crowd reaction to his match were a main event level. And that's something he's never been able to achieve ever in his life. And we all talked about it. People messaged me on Twitter. I did the Patreon review of the final, and I said on that show, this was an incredible match, and he was not carried by Kosei. I think Kosei was by far the best guy in that tournament. He delivered his end of the bargain to make the best performance of his career. And this guy, when he was a young lion, he was one of the most heralded young lions in their history. Like, even more than Sho. I always like Sho better personally, but a lot of people said that he was the better worker. And he's gone on to have the career he's had, and now he finally gets this moment. Like, you bring the emotion, you bring the echoes of chaos back. It's this incredible match. Like, everyone loved him. Again, he felt like a main eventer there. And what is he doing on the exact next show, not even 2 weeks later?
So excluding the Toru Yano versus Super Sasadango Machine show that happened in between that, he had the Best of the Super Junior final with a rating of 8.96. And then he had the match for the junior tag title with Masabato against Doki and Cho with a rating of 3.87.
That was even lower than the dog collar match. Not there.
I mean, it was a nothing match. It was
a bad match. It wasn't even nothing. It was actively bad, in my opinion, like all of the House of Torture ones. But on top of that, he was at best the third most important person in the match because all of the heat was on Doki and Wato, and more likely the fourth most important person because at least Sho got a title in there. Like, how did you fuck that up so bad in like 2 weeks? Here's what I would have done, Strigga. This is like unsolicited but potentially good advice. Yo had this amazing match where he brought back all of the Chaos members' moves. And it meant so much to everybody. You saw emotional tweets from like a former Chaos members and how great it was. You had him come up short in the end. I would have had this match. First of all, I would not have had... If you're going to have Doki return, just have Kanemaru in the match. And just do an angle where Doki takes out Wato before the match. Like, maybe it looks like I'm back to support you guys, and he destroys Wato. Wato gets taken out. So Yo has to fight 2-on-1, and really 3-on-1 against the House of Torture. He's in that position. He overcomes them. He pins Kanemaru and gets the win. Like, we keep the titles. You could go to Doki and Sho next month if you want. But you have Yo overcome the odds. He wins in a 3-on-1 situation. He shows the heart of a champion. I would have, after this show, have Goto in a press conference say, Yo showed me the spirit of chaos, and he deserves a title, and I'm skipping him up in a line. Like Goto versus Yo on a smaller show. Like one of these 7-5 shows, like the cage match last year with Despy and Sho. Like, make that be the main event. Yo versus Goto in an emotional match. Obviously, Yo would lose, and decisively. But you would give him a big moment, and you would capitalize on this one moment he's made for himself in this decade-plus career of his, where he felt like a main star. You could at least capitalize off of that, give Goto a warm-up before the tournament, and you don't lose what you had with the Best of the Super Junior final. With what they did, he basically means nothing. Like he means as much as he did before the tournament, and that's a real shame for somebody who laid it out on the line.
It's not a shame. It's actively hurting your own business.
I know, and I mean, like I said, that's what I would have done. But you could have come up with another reason. Somehow or another, he gets a major shot.
The other idea that I have is Yo turns to the House of Torture.
Well, that's not capitalizing on what we had in the final. That's turning away from it, but I think that's much more likely to happen. I mean, what I said is not going to happen for sure.
Everybody has to choose sides, like I said, on this roster.
I mean, what's his upside now as a babyface? And that's why I'm against Doki turning, because he's like one of the only ones that had any. Like overall, like even Akira is not any kind of featured player like in the division. We may like them as wrestlers, but what is the upside of a Yo as who he is now compared to reforming, Roppongi 3K?
Yeah, he had that moment after the Best of the Super Junior final where something could have happened, but now he's going to go back where he and Master Wato have been.
Yeah, him and Wato. I think at least Wato, maybe they could do something with him and Doki, but like you said, Wato's no better. Like, Wato's no better.
Yeah, they are not doing anything. Yeah.
Somebody's got to challenge for those tag belts.
What do you think about Tanahashi and Yumura?
Over-delivered again.
Yeah.
I thought they were.
I think it's rated too low on Cage Match.
I agree with that. I think this is a recommended match for me. I would have it at least 7 out of 10. And for an under 10-minute match, I thought it was like these two are like really great opponents for each other. Is what I came away from each other thinking. Where like Uemura, like Tanahashi, for as much as we love him, it's hard to deny he hasn't slowed down in recent years. But Uemura has the physical advantages over Tanahashi that Tanahashi doesn't have anymore, whereas Tanahashi has the charisma and the connection with the crowd that overcomes a lot of Uemura's weaknesses. And I thought they worked together to create a really good match, and I love the finish where Uemura went for like the Frankensteiner into the armbar, which is a cool move. But Tanahashi just rolled through into a pin. A lot of people were surprised by that. I thought it personally made sense, especially when you see the G1 blocks. Obviously, Uemura will get his win back in the G1. But because usually when I watch Uemura, I know a lot of people like him, but I always feel like there's just something missing with him. He feels like a guy who's a good wrestler. Like, no doubt in the ring he has skills. But every time I watch him, I think, man, there's nothing special about you at all. Like, I don't know if it's the look, the presentation. Do you know who he reminds me of? And I don't know why I thought of this, but I came to this revelation after this match. And it's a shame because I think it's going to sound like me detracting from him, but I also think this person would also have the potential to be a top star in 2025 main events. He reminds me of Wataru Inoue in a lot of ways. Like, his style of wrestling, and his look is worse, but his wrestling's a little better. But that's a guy who was doing nothing for years, like in New Japan, but a solid worker. And in 2025 New Japan, Uemura feels like he could be a top guy.
Exactly. I was going to make exactly the point, and that's been basically the point that I've made.
But I don't think Uemura, he is, though. Yeah.
All the time that Wataru Inoue at that point, there were guys like Tanahashi and Nakamura.
Yeah.
Incredible characters with incredible charisma. Even a Yuji Nagata was much more of a character than Uemura was.
Makabe.
When Inoue was Makabe.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
There were characters. We don't have these kinds of great characters anymore, and I think that Uemura has a shot, man. I think he has a shot as good as any.
And Inoue was a good worker, but he was never going to be a main eventer at that time, overall. I think, like I said, Uemura, I think, will need changes. Like, still, this version of Uemura is mid-card at best.
That is why I'm kind of hoping that Tanahashi will have something to do with him during his road to his retirement. Because
and I hope so.
It feels like a natural pairing. Like you said, they mirror each other so greatly. The perfect example in this match was the situation when Yuya was rolling through and delivering his own version of the high fly flow to Tanahashi.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to build him to the next level, because I don't think he's at it. I've never really felt like he's even been close to that so far. But I think something like you're saying would really get him to the next level. And I think he's a guy that, you need somebody like this, a workhorse type of player and a legit wrestler type of guy. Like, good wrestler who does good things and is believable. I love his offense. He's got really good explosion in his wrestling. He's another guy that I think wrestles with purpose, and I think a lot of guys don't. And I think Tanahashi is a great pair with him to bring more out of him. I have a hot take on Tanahashi for you here. Historically, we all know that I've been probably his biggest defender of someone with any kind of platform over the years. I've always said that talks of him being like washed or whatever have been way overrated. I think he's pretty much always been good. Pretty much in 2024 by the end, I was kind of like, maybe it is time for him to retire. But I've come to another revelation after this match.
Okay.
Again, this says more about everything besides him than him himself, really. But if you take out Goto and Takeshita, who's not a full New Japan wrestler, I think if you look at his body of work, not just is he not washed, you could make the case he has had the best year of a New Japan wrestler in 2025.
Ooh, I've not thought about that.
Nobody has had a match as good as him and Takeshita, at least among heavyweights.
That's right.
Because I thought the Best of Super Junior final was an incredible match. But I thought Takeshita, nobody's had a match as good as with Evil as Tanahashi has.
Yeah, that's right.
Tanahashi had a very good match with Goto, which I really liked a lot for the title. And now he's continuing on, and he's gotten more opportunities to some people as well. We have to admit that with the singles matches.
I'm looking at Tsuji's body of work this year. Tsuji has he has had the match with Finlay that was very well received in the Tokyo Dome.
That was good.
He has had the Gabe Kidd match in February, 9.03.
Yeah, I like that match a lot.
He had the match with Yumura in May, 7.9.
Yeah, I wasn't into that as much as other people, but I know it was well received.
He might be up there too.
Okay, so that's 3, and he's also had a lot of performances where he stumbled as well. I would say that, and it feels like he's lost something overall.
Where are those? I mean, he had the match with Jack Perry, I know, yes, but where are the other?
That was a rough.
Where he stumbled.
I would say this match we just talked about earlier against Gabe Kidd.
Yeah. Okay, yes.
Like, and he didn't really do anything through March and April either.
Yeah, he didn't do anything. That's right. But that's what he
said. So Tanahashi has a better.
Tanahashi had more singles matches than any other of the heavyweights.
Yes, but I'm still saying though, like even with that caveat, like he has had, you could at least make a very good argument. He's been he's had the best body of work. What does that say about this company?
Yeah, I know, it's not good.
I think Shingo, I mean, he really delivered his last 2 matches versus, I thought the Umino match was a banger last month. Like, that was a great match. Like, Umino's one of his best. And this match was great against Goto. Besides that, though, like, I mean, he had the worst match with Takeshita compared to Ishii the night after. Like, that they had back-to-back. You had a direct comparison, and one was clearly better than the other. And he didn't really do anything like the other 3 months. So I just think that it's tough. So like Tanahashi at worst is a top 5 wrestler in New Japan this year. What? And again, I'm his biggest defender. And I love him and all of that stuff. But why? Why is it this way? Would you at least give me that then? He's a top 5 body of work.
I will give you that. Yes, I'm just I hadn't prepared for that talking about actually.
But it's something no one would even think about because it's stunning. Like, but if you look at it, like it's hard to argue.
Yeah.
And I mean
you might be right.
It's good for him. Like, I mean, that's great that he's had. He's done a very good job in this role. I think the Makabe match was the match he stumbled. And it really felt like he took that to heart. And he's really delivered, like, the following months since.
The Makabe match?
Yeah, in February. Where he couldn't get over the top rope.
Oh yeah, that one. Yeah, I remember, yes.
Yeah. But that's his really only bad match. Even bad performance. I would say everything else has been actively like good, or maybe even better than good, like that he's brought to the table. I think he's really finding his way in terms of how to wrestle with his physical limitations right now. I think he's doing a much better job this year than last year. And I mean, we'll see how it plays out in the tournament. Overall.
That's right. Yeah,
but I like the match. Long story short, Tanahashi Uemura was good.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, that was pretty much it, right? That we have to discuss. The Young Lions were fine. They're still far away from any kind of promotion to any situation that we might be talking about them in the G1. Before we go to the G1 lineup,
what do you think of Chase Owens' new gimmick?
I don't want to discuss anything about Chase Owens, to be quite honest. I have not watched the video and I don't care.
The last placed outlaw.
Yeah.
I think. He's a cowboy with a bandana.
He's a cowboy. Yeah, it's great.
Well, let's talk about the G1. We may have to talk about Chase more.
Before we go to the G1, itself, there is the show in Kirkenhall on the 23rd of June with 2 matches. Ishii versus Maloney and Taichi versus Callum Newman. Then there is another Kirken on the 4th of July with Yoshihashi versus Chase Owens and Roy Oiwa versus Don Farley. And those are the 4 qualifying matches for the tournament. So, Maloney is going in, right?
I think it would be like a 100% lock if Ishii wasn't the tag champion.
Yeah, I know.
I think that at least gives him hope to win, and I definitely think he would be the better person to be in.
I mean, you do at least want one tag champion in.
And Taichi will get in for sure. I think
that would be a downer for Newman after being in last year.
Yeah, but he sucked last year. So I think that he is coming off of a good title match versus Goto. Like he finally found something. But at the same time, Taichi's whole gimmick last year was that he had felt snubbed from the G1. Yep. So I think that gives you an easy in. Callum Newman is not... If he's not in, he doesn't really lose that much. Like, if anything, I thought being in actually hurt him last year more than anything. I think they have...
so too. I think so too, but on paper, being in last year and not being in this year would hurt the character, in theory at least.
And he's so young as well. I think he can overcome it. I'm going to take Taichi. Like, you could have Newman. I think my heart says Ishii, who is a double champion, by the way. Ishii was strong and the tag title, so that makes your title bouts look wonderful. For him to not be in, but I do think they have more. The only way I could see Drilla losing is if they have House of Torture cost him the match somehow. Like, and that's a part of the storyline to fuck over the War Dogs one more time. But I think it's much more likely Drilla gets in.
All right. Yoshihashi or Chase Owens? It's probably going to be Chase Owens.
Yeah, I think it'll be Chase.
It's Chase Owens.
Like just what I said when we talked about the show. What have they done with Oiwa or Yoshihashi that compares to having them involved in a main event angle, which is what they had Chase and Fale.
I'm just laughing because of the next one, Dylan. Oiwa and Fale. There just was a question that came in. Do you guys think Don Fale should win the G1 like what's currently happening in my Fire Pro simulation? Dude, your Fire Pro simulation sucks, Patrick K.
Well, I'm not going to disrespect Patrick's simulation because I remember when I did ELW on Twitch on Fire Pro, Yohei did win the GHC heavyweight title, like the first week that I had. So you can't control. That's the thing. You don't understand Fire Pro, Strigga. You cannot control its fate that decides who wins the belts in Fire Pro. So I respect that. Fale's a champion. I don't think that'll happen, and I definitely don't think he'll win the G1. I don't think it's impossible he doesn't win this match though and get in. So you might have something. Still, I think the favorite would be Oiwa.
Yeah, I think it's Chase and Oiwa.
Yeah, but I wouldn't write off the other ones winning either, because maybe somebody. I also think it kind of sucks. I think they have a lot of interesting story potential with Yoshihashi and Goto that has not been explored at all. Like, really?
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Like that's another thing that I would have. That's another thing I would have spent off in my Yo title shot idea. would be Yoshihashi being pissed at that, being like, "What? Like, where's my title shot? Like, he didn't even win."
Right.
Like that's an easy thing. Like they haven't really told any kind of story with him. He's just a total non-factor. As much as I still think he's a very good wrestler, his match versus Finlay last year was a great match. I thought it was better than Goto and Finlay for the global title. But I think that he's talented, but I don't think they see anything in him. And we'll see. This is a real test for Oiwa, but I think they clearly have more in him. So, like we said, we agree on everything. Chase, Oiwa, Drilla, and we disagree about Taichi and Callum.
Yeah, it doesn't matter in any way, shape, or form.
I think it matters in terms of I think it matters in terms of the tournament, because I think if you had a block with Yoshihashi and who makes a better block, Yoshihashi or Chase Owens, I think that's a significant upgrade. And
absolutely.
We saw what the difference without Ishii in the tournament last year. I think that significantly changes the tournament. If Ishii was in there instead of Callum Newman, I think that helps A Block so much last year. And so it does matter, like especially for us watching this crap.
Yeah. There's Gabe Kidd and Tanahashi for the global title. Gabe Kidd's first defense. Yeah. Gabe not winning that, right?
Yeah, Gabe will win. I think it's a good opponent because if they were in the same block, I think that would say something. But there are different blocks. Tanahashi can lose, and he doesn't need his win back.
Yeah. Then we have the Death Pain Invitational. You know, the Death Pain. Nice little pun there. Invitational in Kirkenhall on the 24th of June. Oleg Boltin and Toru Sugiura versus Toru Yano and Tomoya Hirata. What a match.
Freedom's Cross promotion, baby.
Yeah, baby. They've recently been added to the United Japan office that had a show 1 year ago on the 15th of June. It was the last show that they ever did with Naito and Jake Lee in the main event.
Yeah, that show bombed too.
It did. And for the junior title, Desperado versus Jun Kasai. What do you think the chances are that Kasai walks out champion?
I think it's awesome they're doing it. It's a great follow-up to last year. I think the odds are extremely strong that Despy retains.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually think it would be smarter to have him win. To have him win and then lose to Kosei would be how I would do it. Because that saves you Despy versus Kosei for a bigger show at a later date.
Exactly. That's what I would do too.
But I think they're not going to want him to win the title. Mm-hmm. I also think it's interesting that, the idea of this match could be like Kasai has to wrestle, IWGP style type of match. Like if they played into that a little bit, like it's not death match this time; it's for the belt. Like so, we have to wrestle a normal match.
Let's see. Has there not been any stipulation been announced?
I didn't see any.
Let's look at it. There it is. Match card. It says on the bottom that the match stipulation has not yet been decided.
Okay, so they're probably just going to do a death match then.
Yes, they will.
Which, that'll be good too. So, but still,
other matches on the card, by the way, before we go, there's a pre-show match announced. Ryusuke Taguchi, Master Wato, Katsuya Murashima, and Daiki Nagai against Tatsuya Takaiwa. He's back in New Japan, Dylan.
Takaiwa, long-time vet of the junior division.
Kengo and Dragon Libre. That's a good match. I like Dragon Libre. Then there is Rinya Yamashita and X against Masashi Takeda and Kenji Fukimoto, and the two matches that I just mentioned.
Yeah, main event should be good.
Main event should be good. Then we have the Tanahashi Jam, the final show from the Aichi Prefectural Gymnasium on June 29, which has a card. There's Katsuya Murashima versus Daiki Onashima from Noah. Never openweight title. Oleg Boltin defense against Yuji Nagata. Then the match, the six-man tag, Hiroshi Tanahashi, Shota Umino, and Ryusuke Taguchi against Tatsumi Fujinami, Leona, and Hiromu Takahashi. El Phantasmo has another open challenge for his TV title. Tanahashi has another match on this card. He's teaming with Naomichi Marufuji. The two shachos of their respective promotion go against Kaito Kiyomiya and Roy Oiwa. Dylan, nothing ever matters between these promotions because Kaito has neglected Oiwa, and now they're teaming again. Will they be reluctant teaming, or will they just say, nothing matters, we just team here?
Well, they didn't have a real breakup, like angle or anything like that. They just went on their separate ways.
I mean, Kaito didn't add him to his own group. He said, "No, we're not teaming anymore, so you're out."
Wasn't Oiwa already in New Japan by that point, or was that near the end? Yeah, I think you're right.
He was near the end of the run, but he was still stuck around in Noah and was like the rejected ex-girlfriend.
Well. So much for, all rebellion heat, I guess.
Final question that we have here, Dylan, from Burning Hammer at MO_BritRes. Goto versus Zack 3 will happen at the Tanahashi Jam event. How likely do you see a title change at this event, or New Japan pushing it as a realistic option at least?
Well, I think that's interesting to think about. They're doing this. I think the best thing they could do with that would be to just have Goto win, to be honest.
I actually hadn't even considered Zack winning.
Oh, yeah. The title's on the line?
Yeah, the title's on the line, yeah.
Oh, well, then no. Like, no, Goto should win. There's no way Zack should win.
Yeah, Zack challenged him right after Dominion, like not in the ring, but backstage when Goto was having his interview.
Yeah, I think even with the title on the line, or not on the line, I would still have Goto win. So, especially with it on the line. Yeah, the only way you could argue for Zack is if you put some credence in him in Forbidden Door. And you're just going to throw everything away and make sure he has a match for that.
I was actually thinking they were saving that match for Forbidden Door.
So that gives this a chance to be a title change, but it wouldn't make any sense to do it on a show that doesn't even air.
Yeah.
Yeah, so... we can't see this show, so...
I know. I mean, it's... Yeah, that's right. It's a special for TVSI.
Yeah. So that would be weird.
Yeah. That's right. I don't know, man. That's what we have here coming up. And of course, the G1 lineup. Block A, Hiroki Goto, Oleg Boltin, Yua Omura, Yota Tsuji, David Finlay, Evil, Sanada, Tanahashi, and the two names we just speculated about. Block B has Alpha Tasmo, Shota Umino, Shingo Takagi, Zack Sabre Jr., Great O'Khan, Gabe Kidd, Ren Narita, and Konosuke Takeshita. I was asked about this G1 lineup, Dylan, by my good friend Marvin. And I said it's incredibly boring.
Yeah.
There's no surprises. It's same old that we have with the company.
That's the thing. It's like we've seen all of these matches before, pretty much, outside of a few for Takeshita and maybe Gabe. Oiwa, if he comes in, he'll have some fresh opponents. But other than that, we've seen all these guys before. Bolton. So, those are the guys. You kind of have to follow, the guys who have not been in before that much and kind of follow their new matches. Because everything else is just really uninteresting. To me, the only star player of this tournament is Tanahashi himself. Because I think there's legitimate intrigue into what they actually do with him in the tournament. The match quality will probably be what it's going to be. But I think in terms of a push level...
Yeah.
Historically, this type of role has been going winless.
That's right.
Much like Liger, Tenzan had a couple of wins, and then they could do that for him. I think Nagata got a win at the end, maybe. One win left. So is that how this tournament's going to go for him? Just lose to everybody?
I mean, he beat Omura in the lead-up, so it's probably going to lose to him now.
But he beat Goto before.
Yeah. But he also lost to Goto for the title.
Oh, no, yeah, that's right. He lost to Goto for the title. That's what I'm saying. Goto beat him, so should he get his win back here?
That's the question.
Yeah, so it's really weird overall. My gut says they're just going to have him lose a lot. But on the other hand, like legitimately, with this company where it is right now, do they turn to him one more time, like in a major role in this tournament, to try and go to the final?
It would give a significant boost to the Tokyo Dome show.
And I think you can't completely write that off.
And I think they would need that.
That's the biggest match they could do, actually. Like, if you look at all of these names on there, him going for the belt in his retirement match is the biggest match they could have.
Against Goto, I would love it.
But I do suspect that they think, well, it's weird. I mentioned this before. It's very strange how they've handled this retirement tour, like in a lot of ways, because to me, when he announced his retirement, that should be a Muto show, like its own show. Instead, they're doing it at the Dome, and his title match was on the anniversary show, which was a smaller show. Like, they haven't really utilized him as this to even give him a chance to have big drawing matches or anything like that. So is it because they were saving that for this? Like, they had this in mind? Maybe. Or was it just because they don't trust him as a draw on his own anymore? For some reason. I don't think that's true, but it just maybe they're thinking.
I think the thinking here, once again, is, like in many cases, when big shows are put on, they can have a title match and they can have Tanahashi's retirement match. Even though, I know what you're going to say, but there's evidence that promotions have done that. Even though
I think that's true.
The bigger issue is that the title match as the main event with Tanahashi in would be the bigger draw.
How did that way of thinking work this past year?
I know, Dylan. I know it doesn't, but that promotions have been doing that.
Well, and I know that's true. Like I said, I think that's what's going to happen. Like, I think if anything, they think the Tanahashi match is the bigger draw than whatever the title match is on that Dome show. And they don't want to lose that on they want to have a title match and a big match, as you said.
Yeah.
So I do think that's what's going to happen. Do you think they would at least give him? It's not like he has to win the tournament either. Like, would they have him alive on the final day? Let's just say that. Like, is that a possibility in this block?
Let's see. So,
because he owes wins to Evil and Uemura, but could get one back versus Goto.
Yes. So he could prevent Goto from advancing.
Yeah, that would make perfect sense. Like a final day match. I actually think that could be the opening night main event. Tanahashi.
Yeah, that could be.
But we don't know that.
You want? I would have Goto, Tsuji, Tanahashi, and Uemura alive near the end.
On top of it, what is the format for this year? Are we doing the 3-man advance blocks?
We don't know that yet, I think.
They haven't announced it? Because I read somewhere that they're doing it again this year.
Let me see.
But
I've not checked in on that, actually, so I'm not aware of that. I am on my way of finding that out, actually.
Yeah. I think there should at least be a semifinals.
G1 Climax.
They didn't do it for the Best of Super Junior, though.
Yeah.
I think on paper, again, we're going by. Let's just go by 1, 2, 3.
Oh, I'm now looking at the schedule, and they are doing that again.
Okay, exactly. So I had read that before.
Yes.
So okay, that's what I thought. So now we have to pick 3.
To go back to that, so
yeah,
A block winner goes against the winner of the match between the second of block B and the third of block A. That's the first semifinal. B block winner goes against the second of block A and the third of block B.
Yeah, so essentially the number 1 player on the block gets a bye, and then 2 and 3 fight each other to face them. Yeah. So who would be the 3 that could advance from A block? Because we predicted Oiwa would be 1, And I think that, and we disagreed on who would advance, but we don't think Taichi or Newman will advance. So it doesn't matter. Like, really, who would be the three that you would make it? Because I think Goto will advance, Tsuji will advance, and I think Evil would be the third.
Evil makes sense, yeah.
Yeah. What if you had Tanahashi knock out Evil on the last night? Like his last guess. He lost every match in the tournament and he blows Evil out at the end.
Would be cool, but clearly Evil needs a big win.
Yeah. So it's between Goto and Tanahashi as the third man to me. Because I think Tsuji is advancing, for sure.
Tsuji should be a lock.
Yeah. And I think Evil, I have very strong inclinations to believe he would advance. Yeah. And then the third's kind of up in the air between a lot of different guys. Because, I mean, Finlay and Waimura and Bolton are all kind of in that same level. Like, Waimura's yet to have the success the other two have had, but I would say they're all at the same level.
Well, Block B, besides Takeshita.
Yeah, he's advancing. Takeshita. I think Umino advances, and then it's Gabe would be the third.
I mean, you could always do Takagi, you could always do Zack.
Yeah. I mean, you could, but I mean, you don't gain anything with those guys, really. At least with Gabe, you can at least argue that they could try and build him up. I think it's kind of a fool's errand at this point for the reasons I said before, that I think he will go eventually. But I think that doesn't mean they won't try to at least do something with him. And advancing, again, with three guys advancing, I mean, God, Okan advanced last year. Yeah. Like anybody, realistically, any of these guys could be it. Like if they wanted to move up Narita, like they could.
Sure.
Like that would be more logical than Okan last year.
This format makes it less predictable, and that's really what they need because the field itself isn't looking at it.
Yeah, I can't believe they didn't have any outsider.
No, that's crazy, right?
And they needed it this year more than ever. Like with people leaving, injuries, and all that. Instead, they just like, no, we're doubling down on our roster. But it's a lot of matches we've seen before. So how could we be excited about a match that we've seen many, many times before? I actually think I have a perverse interest in Evil versus Sonata, both House of Torture. Like this could be one of the worst matches of the year. Like. And it's possible they also do a gimmick type of thing, like the Taka and Taichi match from years ago.
We could also see Fale versus Evil in the tournament.
And I think that would be a real shame if that happened. And that's why I don't like A Block as much as B Block, because you've got these House of Torture guys with both Evil and Sonata. And I mean, if Tanahashi's done good this year, better than anybody could have anticipated except for me, his greatest defender, obviously. But he's done better. But who's to say the wheels don't come off? He's having to wrestle all of these matches. It's a risk. Like to see how he holds up. But a necessary one, considering like they need him. And with B Block, you get Takeshita. He has the freshest matches and probably the best matches as well. You get to see whatever they're going to do with Umino. Zack and Shingo are not necessarily interesting characters, but they're reliable wrestlers that will always do good. You could potentially, if Ishii and Yoshihashi are in B Block, then that blows A Block away. Like, that pushes it way over the top to me.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Even though that's the opposite of what I predicted with Drilla and Chase. But even then, I think it's Chase coming in would drag it down, but probably not as bad as Newman last year, and if he advances in A, that kind of makes it even worse. Yeah. So I would say B Block is a stronger block on paper.
On paper, at least.
But A Block has more star power. Like people they pushed more. That's like almost literally all of those guys could advance in A Block.
Yeah, they kind of balanced it out pretty well with what they have.
Yeah, I agree. And they're missing an outsider. Like they really should have brought in a CMLL guy. Or call up one of these United Japan people.
Yes. Yeah.
No junior influence. A lot of people speculated that Hiromu could come in.
Yeah, I think that ship has sailed.
Yeah, that's never happening, in my opinion. I wanted it for a long time, but I just don't think that's happening. But
I'm over it. I'm
I'm over him in general, but
Yeah,
especially in the tournament. But yeah, I agree with you. This is not an exciting tournament on paper, but I think there are certain things that have interest, such as Tanahashi's last run, how much they protect Takeshita. And I do think that if things go good in the play-in tournaments, it could really help the match quality. But just in terms of interest, much like the Dominion show, again, if you look at pure wrestling, that was not a bad show. But because of the lack of intrigue and the terrible booking involved, it made it seem like much worse than it was. And I think this tournament is going to suffer from a similar path.
I have nothing comforting to say against that point.
Well, sorry. I said I didn't mean to be that negative.
Yeah, that's it.
Overall, before we just close it off,
Yeah.
what's your final thoughts on New Japan right now? Like, where would you say they're at in your eyes?
I think the Goto run has done a lot for the company, and I think the way it has been received has, I was going to say overshadowed, but that's not the right word. I think the Goto run is the one thing that this promotion really has to show for, and underneath that there's lots of bad stuff going on with some highlights that we also have, like for example the Fujita and Yo match, the Bolton and Takeshita match. There is highlights in this promotion that we definitely have, great matches, but they make it so hard for us to really attach ourselves to these highlights, because on the other side you always know that few things even matter in this promotion. And who knows? This Goto run, if headed for the first half of 2025, they might as well wake up one day and decide that Goto is not the guy anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really the issue that I have. But it's an overarching issue with a lot of promotions in Japan. They just, if you look to All Japan Pro Wrestling, for example, there is a lack of real, logical, and compelling storylines that are not rooted in comedy or buffoonism.
Yeah. I really don't have anything to add. I really agree with everything you said, pretty much. I think that they could be heading in good directions with things like the tag titles, with like the junior title, with Kosei potentially winning.
Uh-huh.
But with so much stuff focused on the House of Torture right now, and I totally agree about the Goto reign, but I feel like the best we can hope for, like going forward for the rest of this year, is a neutral step. Like that's the best case scenario. And I think that it's much more likely things get worse before they get better.
Yeah. So ending this on a positive note, like I said, the idea of Kosei Fujita becoming junior champion, that's a good outlook. Bolton being the never champion. I agree. I just created a mask gimmick for him at some point. Bolton being the never champion is good stuff. Taichi and Ishii, like you said, is good stuff. Tanahashi on his run is good stuff. Goto is good stuff. We'll see about Gabe Kidd and the global title. Takeshita being in there is good. So there's positives. Like you said, the show here wasn't as awful as some say it was, but there is definitely so much dirt going on with that House of Torture storyline that I don't have any time for, and I don't want to see.
I think many agree.
Yeah. All right, Dylan, that's the wrestling part here. We've finished New Japan Pro Wrestling. You wanted to say something at the end of the show?
Yeah, I definitely wanted to go out talking about Ken real quick. As I said at the start of the show, many of you know him as Grandpa Ken, right? But the funny thing is, I never really looked at him as like a grandpa or anything like that. Literally, I really didn't hear him start to call me his grandchild until like maybe the past year. And the first time he did it, it was really weird to me.
Mm.
And it made me think something was wrong back then. Like, because I always just called him Ken. Like, he was my great grandpa technically, but like he was like, and I never really looked at him. Father's Day was recent. I never really saw him that way either. It's kind of like he was more like my best friend in life, you know. Just watching these shows here was super weird without him, because we would always start to watch together, and obviously I'll keep that going no matter what. But you know, there were times, and many of you remember last year when Nanny passed away. You know, my great grandma. That was a sad thing, but in a lot of ways, Ken was more close to me because we would spend so much time together, literally for 25 to 30 years. Like, you know, pretty much like the last 3 decades, pretty much. And, you know, I posted some pictures on Twitter, and one of them was us playing the OG Sega Genesis / Mega Drive, if you're a non-US fan. We played that thing into the 2000s. Like, it was way older than that, you know. But we always went back to it because we played it when I was a kid. I think those are the games he really loved. And we play all the sports games, the wrestling games, the 2Ks and Maddens and all that stuff. And even like, you know, he was a huge fan of football, like soccer and everything like that. He was probably the only person I ever met that thought the U.S. could actually win the World Cup. And I'd always make fun of him for it.
God bless him.
And one time, the last time we saw the World Cup, I hate that this is the last World Cup memory, but something had happened where they had actually advanced somehow, and everyone blamed the manager for the U.S. losing, and he like literally threw something against the wall when they lost. He was so mad, and I was like, "Kid, they are never ever gonna win the World Cup." But yeah, he was a huge fan of that stuff too. We used to play those games a lot. We'd watch all kinds of wrestling. I said it on Twitter, a lot of his story. I mean, he grew up wrestling with freaking like the old school. You know, if you don't know Ken, he grew up in Chicago. He was a big fan of like AWA, you know, Dick the Bruiser and all that stuff, and the Crusher, and you know, but even into the 90s, he was a big WCW fan, and eventually jumped to American wrestling, and eventually jumped to Japanese wrestling, and that was all through me, pretty much. And you know, a lot of my favorites really became his favorites, and he liked some guys more than me. He watched it in a weird way to me, in that he was a fan's fan. He watched it like kayfabe was real, kind of. Like, you know, if heels, like he hated all the cheating heels, and if you were a babyface, he probably liked you. Yeah,
Good.
You know, like he was like the most pure fan, pretty much. Like, watched it in terms of the stories and all of that. And I love talking about him and bringing him up on this show for all these years, to the point where everybody knows him in his own way, and I think that's amazing and kind of funny as well. Like, very hilarious of him, of all people. But he loved wrestling. Like, he was a true fan. Like, he would watch Japanese wrestling, CMLL. We went through a huge phase of like DGUSA and Dragon Gate. Just like me, BB Hulk was his guy. Like, that's kind of how he knew Dragon Gate was like, oh, that's Hulk's promotion. Pretty much. Like, whenever I'd bring one of his shows up, and he saw him, he's like, oh yeah, Hulk. And he'd always remember that. And I'm so thankful that the last year we got to have like these times together, you know, because there was a few years there when we were in our old apartment and Nanny was getting sicker, that he really didn't even watch wrestling with me anymore, or play games and stuff. And I always wondered why. Like, we'd still watch like the Grizzlies and stuff. Like, you know, I'd go out to the living room and watch the Grizzlies with him. And we did a lot of good. He did a lot of good things together, overall. And I do have to say, I love that I mentioned the Sega before, because I got to shout out my friend Anthony, user Sega of my house one on Twitter, where he said Ken was the realest Puro watcher in the game, which accurate statement, I would say. And I really feel like now we did all this stuff together. That's so important part of me that he became a part of me, like through these important things, through 30 years of this, pretty much. And I'm so blessed and thankful for all of you guys out there that sent very good, warm, well wishes, including the New Japan president himself, Hiroshi Tanahashi.
Yes.
Through all the years,
Greatest
which
guy.
Ken would just flip out. He wouldn't like that as much as Jade Cargill's message, but purely for superficial reasons. Okay. But he would have liked it a lot, and it meant a lot to me that Tana took that time out of his day for Ken-san, as he called him,
Yes.
very respectfully. And I do agree. I feel that way too. I'm not trying to preach to anybody, but you know, I do hope and think and believe in my heart that he will be watching us, watching all of these great moments. I'm happy that he got to see Goto win the title. That was such a huge moment for us. And again, like I said, I never really looked at him as a father, but I also never had a real father, overall. So he was kind of like the closest that I could have to that. And to have such a father figure storyline in Goto was that's something I'll never forget, And overall, I think he'll be watching Tana's retirement just like he wished for as well, from heaven, and I hope that. And I'm so sad that he went out how he did, because cancer is such a terrible, terrible thing that, it was such a roller coaster ride these last 3 months. He was somebody that was really scared. He was really scared, and he put off going to the hospital back half a year ago. And a lot was going on, too. We have to remember that with Nanny dying and all of the terrible things that happened in our moving, he just didn't even have a chance to mourn her. And I'm sorry that I'm sorry that I couldn't do more to help him. And, I think that he was just scared, and by the start of April, he was looking really bad, like really bad. And he went to I think I mentioned this on Twitter, that we went to the hospital in Nashville, and God,
Yep.
He couldn't even get 2 steps out of the elevator, and he slumped to the ground because he couldn't breathe. And he spent a month in that hospital in Nashville, like way away from us. I've never lived in Nashville, but St. Thomas did an amazing job with him. And by the month, he spent an entire month straight in that hospital now. And I'm sure, and I told him, I was like, I know you're bored out of your mind there. Like, why don't you come on home? We can do some more stuff. And we watched the Big Stardom show last month when he came back. WrestleMania, like New Japan, all that stuff we watched. And when he came back, it was like he was back. Like he still needed oxygen, but he was breathing fine and doing good. And it was like, man, this month, because everyone was so afraid of the chemo, and he just like fucking went through it. Like, and he stood on business, and I was so proud of him. And he did make some mistakes at the end, which really deteriorated his health quickly, because it was good through all of May. Like, May was good. It looked like, I was like, hey, maybe this could go into remission, something like that. And then it spread to his brain. And he had a really hard time the last week. And that's the part that I'm very sad about, because, I was going through some personal stuff right now, and I'm going to tell it to you guys, and I kept telling him every day that I would hook up the system, because I have a PS5 now, but I still had a PS4, and I was going to hook up the game in his room, and we were going to start playing again. And I kept putting it off because I was really depressed, because a lot was going on at my job.
Yeah.
That was bad, and I kept putting it off. And I'm never going to get that moment now. I'm never going to play wrestling with him again. I'm never going to play football with him again. I'm never going to get to watch the Cubs with him again. That's what happened when I called the ambulance. What were we doing? We were together. I was watching the Cubs with him, and everything was fine. But he went out so bad in the hospital because he looked like so bad and old. and they wouldn't even give him water, and they wouldn't give him ice cream like he wanted. And he wasn't even talking until I got there, but somehow I made him talk. I worked really hard because I tried, and I wish I'd ripped that damn mask off of him and given him the ice cream that he wanted. I wish I just told him, come on home, man. Like, let's do this together. You know, he would have died probably still, but he would have been here. And I'm gonna live with that the rest of my life, man. And I really hope that if anything happens, God bless all of you listening to this right now, but I hope if you have anything happens with your guys, your best friends, your family, please don't wait and don't be like me and fuck everything up with somebody that you love. Because
I wish Dylan, I wish there was something comforting I could say. I can. I hope I can. I think you did.
no, man, you've done a lot, and you're fucking awesome.
I think you did what you could for him, for him, and I
know I did a lot too, because I was with him, and everybody's trying to tell me this stuff. Okay,
yeah, I know.
Like everybody's trying to tell me this stuff, like, oh, you did a lot, you were there, but he was there for me too.
Yeah,
and he was he was scheming, and he told lies, and he grew up in a crazy ass situation just like me. And I think that's why, in a lot of ways, we really bonded together, because he grew up around gangs and stuff in Chicago too. He went through horrible things too. So we had something between us that a lot of other people didn't have. But for all of his negatives, he was my best friend, man. And yes. I'm not saying I didn't do enough. I definitely did something. You can't say I didn't do anything. And I'm not even saying I didn't do enough. But what I'm saying is I could have done more. And I know that's true. And I will live with that. But thankfully, as I said, he will try to recompose myself here. But I know that he's looking down on us. And I know that he's going to keep watching these shows. And I really hope that everybody out there doesn't make those same mistakes. Even though life's hard and bad stuff happens, because I was going through bad stuff. But that's no excuse. I should have plugged that thing in, and we should have played it, and I should be here telling happy memories. And I do have a lot of happy memories. There was way more good than bad. And I'm so grateful for Ken's time, and I'm so grateful for all of you. The true family that I have left, the Eastern Lariat family, will always be with me, and that's very, very real.
And I'm so glad that you're here right now.
I'm glad too, because, like I said, I couldn't talk to you about this crazy ass wrestling world. And like I said, a lot of the stuff that I would analyze, Ken didn't even probably think about that much, but I still think about that a lot. Now, it was really early on, right? They say time heals all wounds, but there's some stuff that I'm going to have to live with, like what I just told you guys. And like I said, I really regret that hospital, because that hospital did not take care of him as good as the national one, but that's neither here nor there. The fact is, sometimes I watch these shows and I'm thinking, man, because I've watched a few wrestling shows since he passed, and I always think, man, what we couldn't think about this? Like, would he be hyped for this, or his favorite one, something big? And so I think about him a lot. He's always going to be here with me, and he'll always be alive in that way. And so, Grandpa Kid, still a part of the Eastern Lariat for sure, and I'm so proud that I was able to bring his name to the world in the most inexplicable fashion possible. But mostly I'm thankful for you, Strig. Like I said, you have been great, and all of my great friends that I've made that I never would have made. I told, when we recorded episode 300 off the air, I told you that like, and this was obviously before he passed, but like, I could have been a total nothing in life. Like, I grew up in a terrible, terrible situation, and I could have just spiraled out of control, and I wouldn't have been here at all or done anything with my life. Everything I did, I failed at in some spectacular way. But through this show, it's really proven to me, and most importantly, the people that have known me, whether it's on Twitter, whether we've done stuff together, because I've recorded with so many people, tried to do anything I could to bring the Eastern Lariat name value to their shows, more so than my own name value, of course. But still, I've met these people that showed me, once again, just like with Nanny in October, it was still true then, and it's still true now. The people that have shown me love and care is more than I ever could have asked for in a family or a relationship that I never got to have before. But you guys gave me that. And I'm so, so thankful for all of you. I'm so proud of this show for being what it is. And I cannot wait for our next show, whatever promotion covers, or if it's the half year awards. I know it's going to kick ass. And we need all of you to continue. And I need all of you to continue going. So thank you guys so much. And once again, Strigga, I could not thank you enough for everything you've done with me. And you are not just my co-host, but my true friend. And I love all of you so much. I hope you know that.
We certainly do, Dylan. And there's nothing more that I could add. So let's finish it the way that we only could. Thank you all for listening, and goodbye.
Sayonara.